What's going on, everyone? It's Adrian from DraftDime, and I know it's been a while since I've dropped a video, and I apologize for that, but that's because I've been working really hard on our brand new Sims tool, which is finally available for you to access now on DraftDime.com. So as far as it's been going with the Sims tool, I've had our very own Curdy Jacks and Kenny beta testing the Sims over the past few weeks, and Curdy Jacks actually took down a FanDuel after-hours slate. He got first place in that one by using the Sims. And he also got first place in one of the Express NBA slates, got first place in that one as well. And then Kenny actually got second place in one of the NFL Thursday through Monday slates. So it's only been a few weeks and we've already had some pretty good results with the Sims tool. Now in this video, I'm going to explain what exactly this tool is, how it works, and I'm going to go through all of its different features. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, first, let me give you a simple and brief explanation for exactly what this tool is and how it works. And then we'll go into more detail throughout the video. And by the end of the video, you have a really good understanding for how this tool works. But in a nutshell, what this tool is doing is first, it's simulating 10,000 lineups. And these 10,000 lineups are supposed to closely resemble the 10,000 lineups that you'd be competing against in a large GPP tournament. And it's doing this by taking into consideration our ownership projections, although it's a lot more complicated than that, but you don't have to worry about that because that's all happening behind the scenes. But once it creates these 10,000 lineups, then what it does is it competes these lineups against each other 10,000 times by simulating each game in the slate 10,000 times. And when that's finished, it ranks all of those lineups in order of ROI, which is the primary metric you're concerned with. And you'll understand this a lot better once you see it in action. Now, the great thing about this Sims tool is it works directly with our Optimizer 4.0. So you could import lineups from the Optimizer 4.0, and then you could run them through the simulation, and you could see what their ROI is. And you could also import pretty much any lineup from a CSV file. So maybe you're using a different lineup generator and you want to simulate those lineups to see how they do. Well, you could do that by importing the CSV file. And I'll show you in a little bit how to do that. Although I don't know why anyone would want to use any other optimizer besides ours, but that's besides the point. But anyways, if you're familiar with the Optimizer 4.0, you might notice that it's a very similar layout to the Optimizer. Up top here, you have the schedule. And for each game in the schedule, you got the over-under up top here. And then you got the projected points for that team underneath their logo. Then you have some filters over here. You could filter by position, by team, by injury status. You could also search for a player. Then in the player column, you have the player name. If you click the player name, it pulls up a player card with that player's game log, as well as some other information. It also has next to the player name, this number right here, which is defense versus position. So Jokic is going up against the Lakers, and the Lakers are ranked 27th against opposing centers. So that's a pretty favorable matchup for him. LeBron James going against Denver. You see the bright red 1. That's a bad matchup for him. So it's a nice little visual tool. Also has the injury status next to the player's name. And this column right here, the GPP ownership percentage, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's how much we expect a specific player to be owned in a GPP tournament. And this is actually editable. So let's say you think LaMelo Ball is going to be less owned than 33%. Let's say you think he's going to be 22% owned. If you change that, now when you run the Sims, LaMelo Ball is going to be in roughly 22% of the lineups, although it's not exact. In this column here, you have the DraftDime projection, which is just your standard projection. Then you got PRJ1, PRJ2, and PRJ3. With these columns, you could hit this upload button right here and upload your own custom CSV file with your own custom projections. And then you could change the weight right here to reflect that. Right now, we have the ownership adjusted projections in these next two columns as the default. But if you upload your own projections, then it'll overwrite that. And I don't use the ownership adjusted projections at all for the Sims tool. It's not necessary, but I do like using it for the optimizer sometimes. And then you got your floor and your ceiling. Then this column right here is the weighted average projection. So let's pretend that you uploaded your own projections to PRJ1. Well, let's change our projection to 50%. And then let's change PRJ1 to 50%. And then you see this column here change to reflect that. So it's a nice little way to customize your projections. And then when you run the Sims, it's going to take into consideration the player projection. So maybe you want a lot more exposure to Jokic. Well, if you increase his projection, then you'll get a lot more Jokic and some of the top ROI lineups. And then this last column here is value, which is fantasy points divided by salary. And that's pretty much it. Now, the first step that you're going to do is you're going to come over here to step 1. We made it really easy for you. Step 1, step 2, which is optional, and then step 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on step 1, which is configure contest. And now you have to put in all of the settings for your contest. Now, currently, you could only do large GPPs. So the contest type is GPP and the contest size is 10,000. And you can't change that currently, but you will be able to change it in the future. We're going to add 50-50s, single entries, quintuple ups, triple ups, double ups. And then you'll be able to change your contest size. Maybe you're in a 100-person contest. But for now, let's be honest. People only want this tool for a large GPP anyways. So this should cover, what most people want to use this tool for. And then you got this field right here, payout to first. And right now it's set for 25%. So let's say you're in a tournament with a $400,000 prize pool and $100,000 goes to first place. Well, then your payout to first is going to be 25%. Or maybe you're in a tournament with a $100,000 prize pool and $5,000 goes to first place. Well, then you're going to have a payout to first of 5%. So the options are 5%, 12.5%, and 25%. And that covers most of what you're going to be seeing in all of these tournaments. You want to select the option that most closely resembles what the payout to first is in your specific tournament. And you'll see that it makes a huge difference. If you choose 5%, your top ROI lineups are going to be significantly different than if you choose 25%. So this is something that really matters. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's choose 25%. And actually, before I hit simulate contest entries, let me refresh the page because I forget what changes I made. Okay, now let's come over here, keep it at 25%, simulate contest entries. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is creating 10,000 lineups. And the way it's doing that is it's looking at ownership projections, but it's not quite as simple as that. It's also taking into consideration who's using optimizers, who's stacking in the case of NFL and MLB, who's hand building their lineups. All of these factors are taken into consideration when building this pool of lineups that you're going to be competing against. So that's done now. So let's hit close. And now step 2 is optional. That's what I was talking about earlier, importing custom lineups and running it through the Sims tool to see how those lineups perform and what their ROI is. I'm going to skip that for now. I have some NFL lineups that I want to run through, so I'll show you that later on in this video. And now let's go over here to step 3, simulate Slate ROI. So this process usually takes anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. And like I mentioned earlier, it's simulating each game in the slate, and it's doing it 10,000 times. And the way we simulate each game in the slate, that's a secret. I'm not going to get too much into that, but just understand that, we're taking a number of factors into consideration: player projections, floor, ceiling, range of outcomes, point spread for the game, over under for the game, and most importantly, player correlation. And that's all I'll say about that. So let me go ahead and fast forward this. So once this process is done, it's going to sort the lineups by ROI, and then it's automatically going to favorite the top 150 ROI lineups. So this here is going to be your top ROI lineup with an ROI of 709.6%. So let's go ahead and view this lineup by clicking this view button right here, and that gives you the classic lineup view. And you can sort of see why it likes this lineup. It likes Amen Thompson at 4.3%. There's a lot of upside there with that low ownership. Then you got Josh Giddey and Ayo Dosunmu, who I know happen to be positively correlated. And actually, if you come over here to his player card correlation, and let's choose Ayo Dosunmu, you see that they're positively correlated. So yeah, let's close out of this lineup. So right now it's sorted by ROI, but if you wanted to, you could come over here and sort it by DraftDime projection. So, and now you'll see that the top projected lineup has a projection of 318.68, and it cashes 76% of the time. The problem is it never gets first place because the lineup is super chalky. So that's why it only has an ROI of 48%. So let's view this lineup. You can see that it's super chalky. So that's the beauty of using the Sims tool, because the top projected lineup isn't always the most optimal lineup to enter into a GPP. So let's close this out and let's come back here and resort it by ROI in descending order. And like I mentioned earlier, it automatically favorited the top 150 ROI lineups. So if you come over here to export favorites, that's going to export a CSV file with all of those lineups. Or if you come over here to save favorites, you could enter a name for this. So we could call this 150 Sims and hit save lineups. And now that's saving to your DraftDime profile. So you can access it whenever you want. And you can use our CSV edit tool to apply those lineups to different entries for FanDuel or DraftKings. And I'll show you how to do that later on in this video. But maybe you don't want to do 150 lineups. Maybe you only want 20 lineups. Well, if you come over here and hit unfavorite all, and then you come back over here and hit favorite 20 lineups, now you have 20 lineups selected. And if you hit save favorites, it's going to save those 20 lineups if that's what you're interested in. And whenever you come over here and favorite lineups, it's going to favorite the top however many lineups that you specify, but it's going to do it based on however you're sorting. So right now we're sorting by ROI. So if I unfavorite that and I come over here to DraftDime projection and I put that in descending order and then I hit favorite 20 lineups, now it's favoriting the top 20 projected lineups rather than the top 20 ROI lineups. But let's unfavorite that. And there's also another column here called the score column. And what that is, let's go ahead and sort by score. That's actually a combination of the weighted average projection and the ROI. So if you sort it by score, you'll get a good mix of high projected lineups, but also high ROI lineups. So if you look right here, you got the 4th ranked ROI lineup that's got the highest score. But then come over here, you see this 1083rd ranked lineup. That actually happens to be the lineup with the highest projection. So if you want to get a good little mix of high ROI lineups, but also high projected lineups, you could sort by score. All right, so let's come over here and resort it by ROI. And I want to note some of these other columns. This column right here is dupes. That's how many duplicates of this specific lineup we expect there to be in the pool. In this specific case, there's not any duplicate lineups. And then you got the cash percent right here, and that's what percent of the time this lineup actually cashes in the tournament. So this specific lineup cashes 45% of the time. And in this column, you got first place percent, and it's 0.25%. So that means this specific lineup gets first place 0.25% of the time. And let's compare that to the optimal lineup. So let's sort it by projection over here. And you'll see that the optimal lineup, it cashes 76% of the time, but it never got first place, not even once. And that's because this lineup is super chalky, like I was saying earlier. And that's why the ROI is so much less. Now, if you went in and changed the percent to first to 5%, you'd probably see that this lineup has a little bit higher of an ROI. And I'll run it again later on in this video just to show you that. But I'll run it next time with the 5% to first place. But another thing I wanted to note is this optimal lineup is going to have 29 duplicates. So out of the 10,000 lineups, 29 of them are going to be exact duplicates of this specific lineup. And usually you expect to see that with the optimals. But let's go back over here and resort by ROI, and then let's refavorite the top 150 lineups. And now let's come over here to player exposure. So for those 150 lineups, you got a lot of Josh Giddey. 80% of them have Josh Giddey, so 120 out of 150 lineups. And the field has him 40% of the time. So that means you have 39.45% leverage on Josh Giddey, which means you're going to be rooting for Josh Giddey. So you could go down and find each player and see what exposure you have to that player. And then if you wanted to, you could adjust their exposure. So maybe you don't want so much Josh Giddey. Well, if you come over here and you hit this minus button, it's going to take him out of 5 lineups. And that's because we have the 5 selected. We could also take him out of 1 lineup, 10, or 20. So let's keep it on 5 and let's hit the minus sign. And now you see his ownership went down to 76.67%. And now he's only in 115 out of 150 lineups. Or maybe there's someone that you want a little bit more leverage of, like maybe you want a little bit more Joker. You have him in 13% of your lineups and the field has him in 12% of your lineups. Let's go ahead and add him to 10 lineups. And if I hit this plus button here, it's going to add him to 10 lineups. And now you see him jump up here. And now he's in 30 out of 150 lineups. So that's how that works. Now let's go back to the results tab over here and let's unfavorite all of them. and then favorite the top 150 again, just because we made some adjustments to the exposure. And now the exposure is back to normal. And I want to show you what exactly is going on when you adjust the exposure. So if we were to take Josh Giddey out of 5 lineups, so let's go ahead and hit the minus sign right here. Let's come back to the results tab and let's scroll all the way down to the bottom. So as you can see, lineups 146, 147, 148, 149, and 150 all had Josh Giddey in it. So it unfavorited those lineups, and then it went in and it found the next 5 best lineups that do not have Josh Giddey, which are these ones that you see the little heart icon next to. And you could manually favorite and unfavorite a lineup. Like if you wanted to unfavorite this lineup, you simply uncheck it, or I guess unheart it. Or once you heart it, then that lineup is back in the favorites again. Now, not only can you adjust the exposure by player, you can also adjust the exposure by stack, which mainly applies to MLB and NFL. But actually, let's go ahead and refresh this. Let's come back to the main slate. And I wanted to do it one more time, but I want to do it with 5% to first place, just to show you the difference that it makes, because it makes a pretty big difference. So now you can see that the ROI went down a little bit. The highest lineup has a ROI of 264%. And you'll notice in a lot of these lineups, the percentage of the time that the lineup gets first place, 0.22, 0.15, 0.15. This one is 0.1% of the time. Look at this one right here, 0.01% of the time. So it's not quite as important to get first place. And if we sort by DraftDime projection, and now this is the optimal lineup. So this is the number 1 lineup. And actually the projections went up a little bit. And that's just because some of the player projections changed. But the optimal lineup now, if you recall before, I think it was ranked in the 1000s, and now it's the 14th ranked ROI lineup. So it does make a very big difference. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at NFL now. So we're going to go ahead and just run it with the default configuration, 25% to first place. But now I have some lineups that I want to import here for step 2. I'm going to basically hand build a lineup by using the lineup optimizer and our player correlation tool. So let's come over here and open up the player correlation tool and see if we could find some good matchups. And right off the rip, I see right here, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Jaden Daniels is going against the Cowboys, who are ranked 27th against opposing quarterbacks. So pretty decent matchup there. And they're both pretty highly correlated. They have a correlation score of 3.59. So let's go ahead and lock those 2 guys in. There goes Jaden Daniels. And then we got McLaurin. All right, and then I want to look for a running back defense combination. So let's filter for defense. And I see one that I like right here, Cardinals and James Conner, positive correlation with a correlation score of 2.61. You got James Conner going against Seattle. It's a pretty good matchup. And then the Cardinals going against Seattle is an okay matchup. However, the Cardinals are pretty cheap. They're $3,600. So you could save a little bit of money by getting the Cardinals defense. So let's go ahead and find those guys. Conner. And then the Cardinals. All right, and then I'm going to take a tight end that I want, because the tight end position has been kind of crazy this season. And one guy I like at tight end at $5,600 and only 9% owned, so pretty good ownership on him, is Jonnu Smith, going up against New England. Had a monster game last week, finished with 28.1 fantasy points. And he's starting to get his groove in that Dolphins offense with Tua back now for a few weeks now. So let's go ahead and lock him in. And then I'm just going to let the optimizer fill in the rest of those players. I know I said it's a hand-built lineup, but we could call it like a semi-hand-built lineup. All right, so let's go ahead and save this lineup, and let's call this hand-built. Save lineups. Okay, so now we have that lineup saved. So now if I come back over here to the Sims tool, and now when I hit this import button and I hit this little refresh icon right there, now you see that lineup pop up. And if I click view, it'll show you that lineup. So let's go ahead and close that. And now another thing you could do is you can import a CSV file with lineups that maybe you generated using a different optimizer. So let's go ahead, and I have a file saved just so I can show you how this works. Let me go ahead and import that. And now it detected 10 lineups. Let's call this Golf Amon-Ra, because this is a Jared Goff Amon-Ra stack, 10 lineups like that. So now that's selected. If you could go in and select each specific lineup that you want to import, you don't have to import every single lineup from there. But let's go ahead and keep all of them checked, and then let's check this hand built. And now we're ready to see how these lineups perform in the simulations. So let's click over here, import selected lineups. And now it says 11 old lineups have been removed from the field and 11 of your imported lineups have been added to the field. So let's close that. And now we're ready to run the sim. So let's go ahead and click step 3, simulate Slate ROI. And this is going to take about 2 minutes. So let me go ahead and stop the video and start it back up when it's done. And wow, look at that. My hand-built lineup happens to be the lineup with the highest ROI. And you might notice all the lineups that I imported are highlighted green. So that's just a nice little visual tool to help you distinguish between sim lineups and imported lineups. And you could also come over here to this drop down and you could filter for imported lineups, and that'll show you all the lineups that you imported. But let's go ahead and turn that filter off. And I have to admit, before I did this video, I was messing around with different hand-built lineups and running them through the Sims. And that's how I came up with this lineup. But I encourage you guys to actually do that, to mess around with different lineups and try to see if you could come up with any that are better than any of the sim lineups. But if you come over here and view this lineup, you could kind of see what's going on. You could kind of see why it's favoring this lineup. The Cardinals defense at just 2.94% ownership, a lot of upside there, only being $3,600, with a lot of those other defenses, being priced in the 4,000s and having a lot higher ownership. Then you got Jonnu Smith at $5,600, 9.46% ownership. So there's a lot of upside there with a guy like that. And then you got Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Those two guys are very heavily correlated. So if one goes off, the other one is likely going to go off. And they're pretty low owned too, 9% and 9%. Ramondre only 7%. So you could kind of see why the Sims tool favors a lineup like this. And, using this Sims tool over the past few weeks, I've kind of learned, what really constitutes a good lineup. And it's a combination of, correlated players and cheap, low-owned players with high upside. So that's another benefit of using the Sims tool, is you really get to understand the construction of, good lineups. But let's close this out. And my daughter's actually crying right now. I don't know if the mic is picking it up. The Sims tool also liked this third Golf Amon-Ra St. Brown lineup. So let's take a look at that one. And yeah, Golf is going to be pretty low owned at 2.2%. And then him and Amon-Ra are very highly correlated. Also likes Juwan Jennings at just 2.3% owned. A lot of upside there. Giants defense at just $3,300. Not a great matchup, but some upside there if they get a touchdown. They're going to be low owned and very cheap. So yeah, you can sort of see why it likes this lineup. But let's close this. And let's come over here to this stacks exposure tab. And earlier I showed you how to adjust the player exposure. Now in this tab, you could adjust your stacks exposure. And this is something that you can also do for MLB. But right off the rip, you see that your most popular stack is the quarterback +1 for Seattle. You have that stack in 14% of your lineups. So 21 out of 150 lineups. And the field has this stack in 9.1% of their lineups. So you have 4.89% leverage on them. So let's pretend that you're not crazy about this particular team and stacking them. Let's go ahead and take them out of 5 lineups. So now they're in 16 out of 150 lineups. And let's go ahead and find that Washington stack. Here it goes right here. And currently it's in 2 out of 150 lineups. Maybe we want a little bit more exposure to them. Let's add them to 10 lineups. And now you see them jump way up here. Now they're in 8% of the lineups, or 12 out of 150 lineups. But let's come back over here to the results tab. And I want to show you one more thing. If you click on this filters button you could start filtering all your lineups. So maybe you want to see all of the lineups that have James Conner. So let's add James Conner. And then let's come over here and choose stacks. And maybe we want to see all the lineups that have that Washington stack that I talked about earlier. Quarterback +1, add stack. And now let's hit add filters. And now you see all of the lineups that have those specific filters on them. And now if you wanted to, you could, maybe you wanted to add more lineups like that. You could come over here and heart those lineups, and now they're being added to your favorites. Although these have pretty low ROI, so I'm not going to do that. But that's an option for you if you want to do it. So let me come back to filters, and let's clear those filters. And now those filters are out. And there was one more thing I wanted to show you, and that was CSV editing. So let's go ahead and let's save these favorites. And let's call this 150 Sims, okay? And those were saved. So now if you come to the Saved Lineups tab, it has all of your saved lineups over here. So if you click on the CSV Edit button, now it's asking you to upload your FanDuel file. So let's go ahead. I have the file saved. I downloaded it from FanDuel. And now it's showing you all of my entries for all of the contests. And I entered this Sunday NFL Rush 150 times. So let's come over here to this drop down and choose the 150 Sims. And now I can start applying all of these different lineups here to these entries. And the way I do that is you could do one lineup at a time. So if I wanted to, I could hit unselect all right here and then choose these 3 lineups. And then if I hit this little green button right here, it applies those 3 lineups to these 3 entries. But let's go ahead and select all of them. And let's click this lineup right here. And now it applied those 150 lineups to all 150 of those entries. So this is an awesome feature that no one else out there has. It makes this whole process extremely easy. So let's go ahead and hit Save Changes. And now that's ready. But I also entered some single entries and some 50-50s. So I want to show you what I want to do for that. So let's come back over here to Results. And let's sort by cash percentage. Okay. And this lineup right here cashes the most, 67% of the time. So I'm going to, first I'm going to unfavorite all those other lineups. And then I'm going to favorite this lineup right here. So now I have one favorite saved. So I'm going to come over here and save this. And I'm going to call this my cash lineup. I'm going to save this lineup. And I just wanted to reiterate, I mentioned earlier that we'll be adding 50-50s and double ups and single entries, also quintuple ups and triple ups to the Sims tool. But for now, this is a nice little way to do it by sorting by cash percentage. And then I'm also going to come over here and sort it by draft time projection. So that's going to give you the optimal lineup right here. And that also happens to be the lineup with the highest cash percentage, which is very common. It's very common for the lineup that cashes the most to also be the optimal lineup. So I don't need to save that as a favorite. So let's come back over here to Saved Lineups. Let's come back to the CSV Edit. Come over here to this drop down and choose the cash lineup. Okay, so now the cash lineup is selected. And I could apply that to all of these lineups. And I'm going to leave this last one blank because I want to show you something. So let me hit Save Changes. And I'm going to make this cash lineup right here the default lineup. So if I hit this Make Default button, now that's the default or fallback lineup. So any entry that doesn't have a lineup applied to it is going to get this lineup assigned to it by default. So now this file is ready. All you have to do is come over here and hit Rebuild FanDuel file. And it saves it to, for me, it's saving it to my downloads folder. So now I could go into FanDuel and upload this file. And one of my favorite parts about this is once you assign all of the lineups to these entries, you only have to do it once, okay? So let's close out of this and let's come back over here to Results and let's unfavorite this lineup, resort it by ROI, and then favorite 150 lineups again. Okay, and let's pretend that we went through this whole process all over again, and we did this whole process again at 12:55 p.m. Eastern time, right before lock. Well, now all you have to do is run this tool, come over here to save favorites, and now rather than saving it as a new set of lineups, simply replace it, find it from the drop-down list right over here, 150 Sims, and then hit Save Lineups. And you could do the same thing for the cash lineup. And now when you come over here to Save Lineups and hit Rebuild FanDuel file, it'll rebuild it for you, and you don't have to reassign all those lineups to all those different entries. But yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything. If there's anything that I'm missing that you guys have questions on, you could go ahead and leave a comment on this video, or you could message me in the Discord channel. I want to emphasize that this Sims tool is only going to get better and better as we add more data to the model. As far as pricing goes, I used to offer free trials, but I no longer offer free trials. I think this tool is way too valuable to give to someone for free, even if it's only for 7 days. So let's come over here to the pricing page. And for our normal optimizer package, which does not include the Sims, that's $19 a month if you purchase the yearly plan, or $39 a month if you purchase the monthly plan. And that also includes the correlation reports that I was showing you guys earlier on. But if you come over here to Optimizer plus Sims, for that, you could unlock 20% off if you upload our DraftDime avatar to either your FanDuel or DraftKings profile. And that's what our avatar looks like. And if you do that, the yearly plan is just $69 a month and the monthly plan is $99 a month. If you're not going to do the avatar, it's $87 a month for the yearly plan and $124 a month for the monthly plan. And there's a couple other guys out there that offer Sims. I'm not going to say their names, but they're significantly more expensive than us. So yeah, if you do want 20% off, just choose one of these plans and you'll get instructions in your email on what to do as far as the avatar. It's a pretty simple process. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If there's any feature that you think needs to be added to the Sims tool, then let me know, man. I'm definitely looking forward to your guys' feedback because I want to make this tool even better than what it is now.